The two police officers on my doorstep looked nervous, and frankly, I didn't blame them. They were caught in the crossfire of a suburban war, and the woman who had started it was in the middle of a full-blown tactical meltdown. Her name was Brenda, the president of our homeowners association. She was pointing a trembling, accusatory finger at the front door of my own home. She illegally modified the property's primary access point. Brenda shrieked, her voice a shrill instrument of pure, unadulterated rage. She has created a fortress. She is denying the association our legal, covenant-mandated emergency access. This is a fire hazard. It's a violation of at least a dozen bylaws. I want her cited. I want that. That thing, she said, gesturing at the new, high-tech lock on our door, removed immediately. My wife Evelyn, the woman who had installed the lock, the woman who had designed the lock, the woman who held patents on the very technology that was making Brenda so apoplectic, just stood there, her arms crossed, the picture of calm, serene confidence. She was holding a tablet. The senior of the two officers, a man with a tired, patient face, turned to my wife. "Ma'am," he began, clearly trying to mediate a situation he didn't understand. "If the HOA covenants require you to provide a key for emergency access." He didn't get to finish his sentence. Evelyn just gave him a small, polite smile and held up her tablet. "Officer," she said, her voice calm and clear, "would you be interested in seeing the video of your complainant committing a felony 2 days ago?" The officer's eyes went wide. He looked at the tablet, then at a suddenly pale and terrified Brenda. He then looked back at my wife, a woman he had assumed was just another resident, and a dawning, horrified respect began to creep into his expression. "Ma'am," he said, his voice now a low, serious rumble, "I think you'd better show me that video." And that's when everything went wrong. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment. What would you do if this happened to you? And subscribe to HOA Files. To understand that moment of beautiful, technological, and long overdue justice, you have to understand my wife. My name is Tom. I was an English professor for 40 years. My life has been a quiet, contemplative world. Of Shakespeare, of poetry, of the beauty of a well-turned phrase. My wife, Dr. Evelyn Reed, is a different kind of artist. She deals in a different kind of poetry, the poetry of mathematics, of engineering, of impenetrable absolute security. Evelyn is a doctor of mechanical engineering and one of the world's leading experts in high-security locking systems. For 30 years, she designed and built the locks that protect everything from the vaults at Fort Knox, to the server farms of major tech companies, to the secure facilities of our nation's intelligence agencies. She is a quiet, unassuming genius, a woman who sees the world in terms of vulnerabilities and fail-safes. When we both retired, we wanted to escape the high-stakes, high-stress worlds we had inhabited. We wanted a place of peace, of quiet, of simple, unbreachable privacy. We found it in a beautiful modern cabin on a quiet lake in a community called Serenity Shores. It was our dream home, a place to finally, truly lock the world out. The problem was that the world, in the form of our new homeowners association, had a key. Our first encounter with the HOA and its president, Brenda, was at our mandatory new resident orientation meeting. The meeting was held in her immaculate beige living room, and for a full hour, she spoke of only one thing with a quasi-religious fervor: the HOA's mandatory emergency master key policy for the safety and security of all residents, which, she'd explained, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of her own power. The association maintains a master key to every single home in this community. In the event of a fire, a medical emergency, or a wellness check, this allows the board immediate access. It's a wonderful program. It's what keeps us all so safe. She then handed us a small numbered key tag. If you could just provide us with a copy of your front door key within 48 hours, that would be wonderful. It's not optional, of course. It's in the bylaws. It's for your own safety. I was about to just nod and agree, to avoid making waves. But my wife, Evelyn, the woman who had spent a decade designing systems to stop the KGB from getting into places, was looking at Brenda with an expression of pure professional horror. "I'm sorry, Brenda," Evelyn said, her voice polite but with an edge of steel. "But from a professional security standpoint, that policy is catastrophically negligent." Brenda's perfect plastic smile froze on her face. "I beg your pardon? A single master key to every home in a community of 200 houses is not a security feature," Evelyn explained, as if lecturing a first-year engineering student. "It is a single point of catastrophic failure. It creates a massive vulnerability that could be exploited by any number of threat actors. We will not be providing you with a key. We'll be formally opting out of this deeply flawed program." Brenda was not just offended. She was personally and profoundly wounded. I had not just refused her request, my wife had, in front of the community treasurer, professionally and expertly dismantled the very foundation of her power and her pride. The war had begun before we had even finished unpacking. The first violation notice arrived a week later, the $500 fine for failure to comply with the emergency access protocol. I was worried. Evelyn was fascinated. "This is a classic example of security theater," she said, looking at the notice with the detached interest of a scientist looking at a petri dish, creating the illusion of safety while actually making everyone less safe. "It's fascinatingly incompetent." Hey, didn't just get angry, she got to work. She spent the next 2 days drafting a 10-page single-spaced document, complete with engineering diagrams and legal citations. It was a formal, technical, and legally devastating analysis of why the HOA's master key policy was not only a security nightmare, but also a gross violation of state insurance and liability laws. A policy that would, in the event of a single burglary using that key, likely bankrupt the entire association. She sent it, via registered mail, to every single member of the HOA board. Brenda's response was not to reconsider her flawed policy. Response was to double down, to prove that her key and her power was absolute. A few days later, we went out for a few hours to go grocery shopping. When we returned, I noticed the front door was unlocked. My blood ran cold. I went inside, my heart pounding. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was out of place. Except for one thing. On our gleaming stainless steel kitchen counter, there was a single. White enveloped inside was another HOA violation notice. A $25 fine for a non-compliant light fixture in our hallway. And a handwritten note at the bottom, in Brenda's distinctive loopy cursive, just performing a routine safety inspection. "Everything looks great, Brenda. Bye." The violation of our home was so profound, so absolute, that for a long moment I couldn't even breathe. She had used her key. She had let herself and some other person, an inspector, into our home while we were gone, without our permission, without any emergency. She had done it just to prove that she could. I had never, in our 40 years of marriage, seen my wife so angry. But it wasn't a loud, shouting anger. It was a cold, quiet, and terrifyingly focused fury. The fury of a master craftsman whose work has been insulted by a bumbling amateur. The fury of a professional whose sacred duty to security has been violated. "That's it," she said, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. She has just, with her own stupid, arrogant actions, demonstrated exactly why her policy is not a tool of safety, but a weapon of harassment. "And now," she said, a slow, cold smile spreading across her face, "I'm going to fix it." I watched in awe as my wife, my brilliant, beautiful wife, went to work. She went into her home office, a room that looked less like a study and more like a laboratory from a James Bond movie. She made a few phone calls to some very important sounding people at companies, with names like Aperture Security and Aegis Defense. And 2 days later, a plain, unmarked van arrived with a series of heavy stone nondescript cases. For the next 24 hours, my wife transformed our front door. She removed the cheap standard issue lock that the builder had installed. And in its place, she installed one of her own personal designs. It was a state-of-the-art, custom-built biometric smart lock, a beautiful, complex, and utterly impenetrable piece of engineering. It had a fingerprint scanner, a 10-digit keypad with a randomized display, and a core made of a hardened proprietary alloy that she had invented herself, an alloy that could withstand a drill for over an hour. It was, she informed me with a deep sense of satisfaction, the single most secure residential lock on the planet. The very next day, Brenda discovered that her master key, her symbol of absolute power, no longer worked. She came to our door, her face a mask of furious disbelief. She jiggled her key in the non-existent keyhole. She rattled the doorknob. And then she began to pound on the door. Evelyn and I just watched her on the new high-definition doorbell camera feed that was now displayed on our kitchen television. "Evelyn, Tom, no," she shrieked, her voice a distorted, tinny sound from the doorbell speaker. "What have you done?"
Ow.
"You have performed an unauthorized modification to your exterior. You have violated the covenants. You are illegally denying the association emergency access. Open this door." Of course did not. The next day, the letter arrived, a thick, intimidating envelope from the HOA's lawyer. It was a formal legal demand. It ordered us to immediately remove the illegal non-compliant locking device and to restore the door to its original builder grade and is a breachable condition. It gave us a 24-hour deadline. Before the HOA would take all necessary legal and practical action to restore the community's vital emergency access protocol. And that brings us back to that moment. It's a moment on the porch. The 24 deadline had passed, and Brenda, believing she had the full righteous and legal force of the HOA's completely imaginary authority behind her, had called the police to force the issue. She was playing the victim, the concerned president, trying to protect her community from the rogue, uncooperative homeowners who were endangering everyone with their obsession with privacy. The police were there, and it felt like we were about to be legally compelled by actual law enforcement to make our home vulnerable again. The senior officer, whose name tag read SGT, Peterson, was listening patiently to Brenda's frantic legal-sounding arguments. He was a reasonable man, caught in a ridiculous situation. But my wife, my Evelyn, was not going to let this be a battle of opinions. She was going to make it a battle of facts, and she was the only one in this fight who actually had any. She didn't argue with Brenda. She didn't yell. She calmly addressed the police officer. "Officer," she said, her voice clear and steady. "Are you familiar with Underwriters Laboratories Security Standard 437 and the ANSI Grade 1 Residential Security Rating SGT?" Peterson looked at her, clearly confused. "Ma'am, I'm not. It's the highest possible rating for a residential lock," Officer Evelyn said, her tone now that of a respected professor lecturing a class. "It certifies that a lock is resistant to drilling, picking, bumping, and forced entry." She then held up her tablet. "This," she said, "is the live, high-definition security feed from the 4 cameras inside my home. As you can see, there is no emergency. There is no fire. There is no medical issue. There is just a woman," she said, gesturing with her head towards Brenda, "who is angry because I have secured my home against her illegal and unauthorized intrusions." She then tapped the screen. "But what I really want to show you is this," and she played the video. The video from 2 days ago. The video from our doorbell camera showing Brenda in crystal clear HD, using her master key and letting herself and an inspector into our home while we were out. The video showed her walking through our living room, pointing at things. The audio was so clear, you could hear her say, "See? This is what I'm talking about. Tacky. Completely tacky." SGT. Peterson's face turned to stone. He watched the entire 2-minute video in stunned silence. When it was over, he looked at Evelyn, then at the date and timestamp at the bottom of the video. "Ma'am," he said, his voice now a low, serious rumble, "is that today's date on the video?" "No, officer," Evelyn replied, her voice cool and precise. "That was 2 days ago. That was a criminal trespass. That is the reason I changed the lock," she then, with the beautiful, surgical precision of a master engineer, proceeded to dismantle Brenda's entire world. She explained in calm, expert detail. The precise mechanics of how the HOA's master key system, which used a cheap, easily duplicated key, was a massive violation of state insurance and liability laws. She explained how it made every single home in the community a soft target. She then showed him the technical specifications of her new lock, explaining that it was a grade 1, high-security system that was, in fact, far more compliant with state fire and safety codes than the cheap builder-grade locks on every other door in the neighborhood. And then she delivered the final, beautiful checkmate move. An officer, she said, her eyes twinkling with a kind of brilliant, righteous mischief. My lock has a feature that Brenda's little master key could only dream of. It's a smart lock, as a secure digital access protocol. She tapped a few commands into her tablet. I have just sent a secure one-time use, encrypted, digital key to the Serenity Shores Sheriff's Department's official dispatch email, and another to the Fire Department's central dispatch. If there is ever a real verified emergency at this address, confirmed by a 911 call, your departments now have immediate, logged, and authorized access to my home. Brenda, she said, finally turning to look at the now choke-white HOA president, on the other hand, does not. The senior officer, now armed with video evidence of a crime, a clear understanding of the legal and technical situation, and a digital key to my front door, turned to a sputtering, defeated Brenda. He informed her, in a voice that was utterly devoid of sympathy, that she was now under a full criminal investigation for breaking and entering, and that he would be filing the report himself. The story of the incident, and more importantly, the crystal-clear video of Brenda illegally entering our home, spread through the community like a wildfire. The residents, who had been living under the illusion of Brenda's safety program, were horrified. They realized that their own homes were not safe, that their privacy was non-existent, and that their president was a law-breaking tyrant. There was a full-blown rebellion. A special meeting was called. The master key policy was dismantled in a unanimous, furious vote, and Brenda was removed from her presidency in a storm of angry recriminations. The HOA is facing a massive and unwinnable lawsuit from us for the illegal entry and the subsequent harassment, settled for a significant sum. Brenda, facing criminal charges, was forced to sell her house and move away in disgrace. This whole insane, stressful, and ultimately triumphant ordeal taught me a lesson about the woman I married and about the nature of security. Brenda was so obsessed with the power that her little key represented that she couldn't see the massive vulnerability she was creating for everyone. She thought she was the guardian of the community's safety, but she was its single greatest threat. My wife, a true expert, showed her and everyone else what real security looks like. It's not about giving up your privacy for the illusion of safety. It's about having the knowledge, the skill, and the right to truly and impenetrably secure your own home. Brenda is awaiting trial, and the community is finally, truly serene. But her brother-in-law, who owns a shady Laurent home security and inspection company, was just elected as the new HOA president, and he's proposing a new bylaw that would require all residents to subscribe to his company's community-wide board-monitored alarm system.